The media is a bunch of liars, and what isn't being talked about is how they even lie about the amount of gun violence in this country. Why? Probably because they have a political agenda, one that pushes for enhanced background checks that infringe on our freedoms and will ultimately stop good people from the ability to protect themselves. Today, I'll explain why the FBI had to fact-check the media and then talk about 3 bills introduced this year that will destroy our Second Amendment. I'm gonna pick up a brand new gun and show you what the background check process looks like. Then stick around while I see how this thing shoots. My name is Paige Rue, and this is Reloaded. The left has introduced a handful of bills that, if passed, will change how, when, and if you can own a firearm. And in fact, 3 are making their way through Congress right now. The media fronts that passing these bills will fix the system and decrease the gun violence problem we have in this country. But who's creating the narrative that we have a gun violence problem? The media. The only gun-related stories you see on mainstream media are those about criminals or mass shootings. And here I go with the air quotes again. 2 questions that I honestly never thought to ask myself are, what is a mass shooting? And where is the media getting their information? Until I came across these gems a few weeks ago. 2 articles titled, "New FBI Data Shows the Number of Mass Shootings 10 Times Lower Than Media Reports." And another titled, "FBI Refutes Popular Media Claims About Mass Shootings." Drama! Am I wrong for just figuring the media would use the data given by the FBI? It's the FBI. How does the media and the FBI have different numbers? Well, I'll tell you. Once again, the media and the left are manipulating definitions in order to deceive Americans to follow their anti-gun agenda. Go figure. So instead of getting their data from the literal FBI, a government entity, the mainstream media gets their data from a private nonprofit called Gun Violence Archive, or GVA. Isn't that a cute name, Gun Violence Archive? How unbiased of them. The FBI and GVA come out with reports every year that give statistics on incidents that involve a firearm, and they categorize them in different ways. So for example, the FBI report lists the number of active shootings since 2016, and they specifically define it as active shootings. So in 2016, there were 20, 2017, there were 31, 2018, 30, 2019 stayed at 30, and in 2020, there were 40. So there are over 330 million people in the United States and an estimated 400 million guns owned by US citizens alone, and there were 40 active shootings in 2020. 40. The report also found that none of the total 40 incidents occurred in educational environments, healthcare facilities, or houses of worship. Was there still violence that involved a dangerous person handling a firearm? Yes. And I don't mean to mock this because these incidents did still occur and families were affected by them. But the FBI's data does not fulfill the left's narrative that there is a national gun violence problem. So they instead get their numbers from the Gun Violence Archive. During the same time frame, the GVA reports the number of mass shootings as 2016, 382, 2017, 346, 2018, 337, and 2019, 417. They still don't have a confirmed number for 2020 because they're probably gonna make it like 1,000 or something. So how can they have such drastically different numbers? It's because the FBI and Gun Violence Archive use different definitions. Let's take active shootings, for example. The FBI excludes self-defense, gang violence, domestic disputes, and more. But the GVA doesn't exclude anything. So if you use your gun in self-defense, that's an active shooting. Drop your gun while cleaning it, active shooting, according to the GVA. Here's some facts for you, GVA. Guns prevent an estimated 2.5 million crimes per year, and usually the gun is never fired. 60% of convicted felons claim that they avoided committing a crime when they knew the victim was armed. 66% of criminologists say that gun-free zones are more likely to attract criminals than they are to deter them. And the National Shooting Sports Foundation documents a 77% increase in female gun owners from 2005 to 2020. The manipulation is insane. Mainstream media only highlights stories that shine a negative light on firearms because it fits their agenda for gun control. The Gun Violence Archive uses the term mass instead of active because it draws your attention to negativity and the idea that a large number of people were killed due to firearms. What we don't hear about is how firearms save lives. On May 25th, 2021, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a man used his firearm to protect himself and his girlfriend when a suspect attempted to break into his home and threatened to shoot them. The suspect was hospitalized and charged with armed robbery. April 26, 2021, in Greenville County, South Carolina, a man named Christopher Kennedy was accused of choking a woman he had a relationship with while she was holding a 9-month-old baby. During the assault, another man tried to defend them, which allowed her time to find a gun on Kennedy's body, and when he came after her again, she shot him. The shooting was seen as an act of self-defense, and Kennedy was charged. May 26, 2021, in Ogden, Utah, police arrested a man after he attempted to kidnap an 11-year-old girl from the Lincoln Elementary School playground. A school employee who is licensed to carry on school grounds intervened by confronting the man and was able to get the young girl to safety. Stories like these will never hit mainstream media because they don't support the narrative that guns are bad. Meet me at the range for some dry fire tips and how to get the most out of your range time. My name is Paige Rue, and this is Reloaded. So speaking of gun control, let's head over to the range where I'm gonna show you what the background check process is to get a firearm and how recent bills infringe on our Second Amendment freedoms. Let's go. Welcome back. We're here at Shooter's World where I'm kind of gonna do a double whammy. I have a brand new gun that was just delivered and I need to fill out paperwork and go through the background check process to take it home. And I thought I would just take you along with me. This is a brand new gun from Springfield Armory called the Emissary. It was released on July 28th of this year, and it's not a gun that I would honestly normally purchase, but Springfield sent it to me and I thought I'd try it out to expand my horizons. But before I can officially call the gun mine, I have to fill out a 4473. This is a government form that gun licensees use to run a criminal background check in order to make sure that I am legally able to own a firearm. The forms are either given to you digitally or as a hard copy, just like this one. But whether you're purchasing or having a firearm delivered to a federal firearms license or an FFL, like a gun store or a pawn shop, you have to fill one of these out. Even though this form is used on a federal level and is same regardless of what state you're in, some states have more requirements and waiting periods to purchase firearms than others. For example, New York has one of the strictest processes. You have to apply for a permit, submit fingerprints, pay an estimated $400 for permit processing, explain your reasoning for owning a firearm, and then go through a waiting period that could last 3 to even 10 months. In Arizona, which is where I'm at, I need an Arizona driver's license with a current address on it. That's it. So now I need to fill out my 4473, which is basically just a bunch of personal questions. Last name, first name, middle name, it's where I reside, my gender, social security number is optional on this form, and then height, weight, birth date, just a couple personal questions. Then I go through some questions and answer yes or no to. They'll ask if I'm a wanted felon, been accused of domestic violence, or if I'm addicted to drugs, or if I'm a US citizen, just things like that. Once I fill all of this out, the next step is to run the actual background check. The licensor copies exactly what I've entered on my 4473 into the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. We call it NICS, N-I-C-S, NICS. Before submitting, they confirm what type of firearm the background check is for, like a handgun, long gun, or a frame. So this one's going to be a handgun. The licensee does not enter the make, model, and serial number of the firearm you want. That's kind of a mistake that a lot of people think. It's just handgun, rifle, or a frame. Once they do all that, they hit boom, submit, and they receive one of these responses: proceed, delay, or deny. A proceed is pretty simple. It means I'm cleared and I can take my firearm home with me that day. A deny is also simple. It just sucks. It means for some reason you're not legally eligible to own a firearm. This could be because you have a medical marijuana card or have something on your record that you definitely need to take care of. The third of these responses is a delay, which is kind of the tricky one. It basically means that they have to go deeper into your background check to make sure they're clearing the right person. People get real nervous when they're delayed, and it happens all the time, so just don't be nervous. You can be delayed simply because you have a common last name like Smith or Anderson. So it's totally common, but it is possible. And in Arizona, the licensee is given a date from NICS stating that if a response isn't given by that date, Brady law does not prohibit the transfer of a firearm to the buyer. So that's kind of confusing. I totally understand. Normally it's 3 business days. So if I were to do the background check and I were to get delayed, the licensee will tell me, okay, if you don't hear a response by this date, then you're legally able to come get the firearm from us. And those are background checks. Now, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. I have a concealed carry permit in Arizona, so it's magical. The licensee doesn't have to go through the whole background check process with me every time I pick up a firearm because this card says I've already been cleared and I'm good to go. So they simply write down my permit number and the gun is mine. That's how the process works right now. And again, some things could be different depending on what state you live in or their laws. But there are 3 bills that we need to pay attention to, and they are HR 8, HR 127, and HR 1446, which could change the process nationwide and possibly stop citizens like you and me from being able to purchase firearms. So listen to this. HR 8 is a bipartisan background check, and this would require background checks for every single firearm sale or transfer. How it works right now is you have to go through the FBI's background check system whenever you purchase a firearm from an FFL, so gun store or pawn shop. Now there are 2 exceptions to when a background check is not required that some states allow. One is during a private sale, which would be like a friend selling you their firearm. And 2, if you gift a firearm to a friend or family member. Now there is such thing as a straw purchase, which means that you are going to purchase a firearm from an FFL dealer for someone who you know cannot legally own or pass the FBI background check. And that's highly illegal, so don't do that. But speaking from experience, team members at our gun store are trained to detect straw purchases and decline sales if they're sus. HR 8 would essentially remove those 2 exceptions nationwide. The next bill floating through Congress is HR 127. It's Sabika Sheikh Firearm Licensing and Registration Act, which was introduced earlier this year. It would require the licensing and registering of all firearms nationwide. It would also prohibit the possession of certain ammunition and large capacity magazines. The first step in this bill is that the ATF, which is Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, will create a process to serialize and register ammunition and firearms. This registry would include make and model, serial number, owner, date purchased, notification of when the firearm is loaned, and where it'll be stored. So basically, the government is going to know exactly everything about your firearm. Talk about helicopter parenting. Then the Department of Justice will also have a database with all of this information. And on top of this, if this bill is passed, it would require a minimum age of 21 years to own a gun, a NICS background check, 24-hour training course, insurance, and personal references to prove your competence. That's a lot. If this were passed, I wouldn't meet all of the requirements to take my gun home with me today. The last bill that would affect how citizens obtain firearms is HR 1446, which is enhanced background checks. The goal of this bill is to strengthen the background check procedure. So remember how I talked about the 3 responses: proceed, delay, and deny? Well, HR 1446 targets the delay process and makes them indefinite until FBI wants to provide you a response. This basically means if I were to get delayed, the FBI would not have a deadline to complete my background check. According to this bill, after a certain amount of time, you, the buyer, are then able to send an appeal to plead your case as to why you should be approved for a firearm. What if they never get back to you? Is this a beat around the bush way to stop people from legally getting firearms? Or is it the first step in just pure gun control? Because it sounds like that. Thankfully though, I am able to take my gun home with me today, but let's try it out on the range here first. So we're mixing it up a little bit this week. Instead of a tip, I'm gonna show you my new gun. This is a brand new Springfield Armory 1911 Emissary. So I've been pronouncing this thing wrong the entire time. At first, I thought it was a missionary, and then I thought it was emissary, but then I figured out that it's called emissary. And this means a person sent on a special mission, AKA me. It's super fitting because it's definitely James Bond-like. And some features of this gun: it's a 1911 platform, it's chambered in 45 ACP, comes with a couple magazines, and the magazines hold 8 with 1 in the chamber. It's got a 5-inch barrel, and they legit say a grenade-like texture. At first, I don't know if I love the grenade texture. It's kind of rough, but I feel like it would really help control the gun, so I guess we'll see. The trigger is a solid body, flat face trigger, and again, I've never seen a trigger like this, but I'm kind of interested to see how it'll fire. The sight is the same as the Springfield Hellcat. So what it is, it's a U shape on the back, and then it's a tritium front sight. I think it's pretty cool that it does this. It's a little bit different. The rear sight is slightly different than a lot of other firearms because of the rear U instead of like a box, but I really like it. I also like that it has a rail so that you can put a flashlight on it. I think if I were to have this firearm as like a daily firearm, I would more so use it as a home protection gun. And for home protection, I definitely want to have a flashlight. So I like that they have a rail right there. Like I said, this is not a gun that I would normally own, but maybe my mind will be changed. So let's shoot it. Okay, so this is my first 45 ACP that I've ever owned. I really enjoyed it. I don't know, I couldn't carry this as like my personal protection firearm that I carry every day because it's so heavy. While I was shooting, it did get a little heavy, but I am glad that the barrel is 5 inches because it made it a lot more smooth because that barrel was a little bit longer. I did like the grenade-like texture, surprisingly. It was very James Bond-like. I had like little grooves in my hand by the time I was done shooting just for holding on to the gun, but it helped me and I felt like my hand wasn't sliding off the entire time, which was really nice. They also talked about that there's a tri-top slide, meaning that there's like different colors and serrations on here. So with the light reflecting, if you're shooting outside or in the desert, it's not gonna reflect and glare in order to line up your front sight and find that tritium front sight. So I also liked that. I didn't experience that as much because I'm shooting indoors, but if I were to shoot outdoors, I think that would be really helpful. The trigger was surprisingly nice. It was a very light trigger, actually. It was a very light trigger. And I felt like I was able to control the recoil really well, especially being for a 45 ACP. It wasn't that bad. I didn't have any jams. Once again, it was a brand new firearm that I've never shot before, but I want to shoot it a little bit more just to see if I will get any malfunctions. I've never had any issues with Springfield and malfunctions. However, this is a brand new platform for me, so I do want to try it out a little bit more before I say, no, it doesn't have any jams and it has no issues. It fits really well in my hand, especially for how small my hands are. It's a single stack magazine. The grip is not going to be as wide or as thick, so I'm able to get a really good grip on it still, regardless of my hand size. Like, it feels really comfortable. It's pretty good. I would probably use it for a home protection firearm just because it has a rail and I'm able to use it as a flash or use a flashlight for it. I definitely can't conceal this gun because of how heavy it is. But for 45 ACP, and I really was not sold on this when I first got it delivered, I'm warming up to it. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. We went over a lot of technical stuff today, like the FBI and the GVA and a bunch of HR numbers and bills that are currently going through Congress. It's extremely important for you to know how to safely acquire firearms and what the government and media are trying to change about it. Tune in next week to discuss one of the most fundamental essentials for gun owners: concealed carry. Don't forget to like, share, and comment on this video so I can talk 2A with you every week. My name is Paige Rue, and your firearm freedom just got reloaded.